people say, well, the Bible is ignorant about so many science things that we know, and one of them they'll pick up. Of course, it's not. The Bible, you'll find, has a lot of science stuff that's ahead and has always been ahead of the science of the days. Is that too loud? It sounds too, okay. Anyway, but dinosaurs is one of the things. They'll say, well, the Bible doesn't talk about dinosaurs. Ha, ha, ha. See, the Bible doesn't know about something that science has discovered. But don't forget that the word dinosaur was invented by Sir Richard Owen in the year 1841. And he was a Bible-believing Christian, the head of the Royal Museum in London, and was against Charles Darwin his entire career. But he invented the word, or coined the word dinosaur in 1841. If 200 years ago, a T-Rex went running down the main street of Elizabethton, okay, aren't you from Elizabethton? Close. Okay, anyway, Caden. People wouldn't have said, look, there goes a dinosaur. The word wasn't in anyone's vocabulary yet that has said, look, it's a dragon, because yon dragon, if it was in the Middle Ages, people talked about dragons. So does the Bible. Don't forget, the King James Bible, particularly 1611, we're talking about those days in that translation. And so the Bible says, the beasts of the field shall honor me, the dragons and the owls. Now, when you're actually talking about dinosaurs, in the Bible, you're probably going to see dragon. Now, there are several different types of dragons described in the Bible, and some people are probably familiar with these things, but it doesn't hurt to have a refresher. And for the newbies in creation science, this ought to be a real eye-opener. Okay, this verse here, and this is an Apatosaur. Behold now, behemoth, he eateth grass as an ox. He is the chief in the ways of God. In other words, the largest land animal that God created. These are the giant megasaurs. He lieth under the shady trees in the covert of the reed. Now, a lot of times unbelievers will make fun of this verse, saying, if he's so big, how can he lie under the trees and the reeds? But it's this picture of an Apatosaur is actually from an evolutionist book. They believe these creatures are so large, like cows like to, walk around in the cow ponds and everything. They float when they do that. That these creatures are so large, they enjoyed standing in deep river water and feeding on the vegetation on the banks of the river while they were standing in the water. And so they could easily eat underneath the trees, standing in deep water like this, and in the fens and in the cattails and such things that were on the side of the riverbank. So that makes perfect sense, even from what evolutionists say about the habits of these creatures. He lieth in the under the shady trees in the covert of the reed and the fens. The willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinketh up a river. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. So it's talking about a large creature. Even today, people will talk about anything that's large as being a behemoth. But the word behemoth, behemoth, is one of the translations of a large creature that is described in the Bible. It could easily have been a dinosaur or a dragon, a Tenian. Next. Oh, I'm sorry. I have the clicker myself. This one here, the Leviathan. Canst thou draw out Leviathan with a hook? This is just the very next chapter in Job, where God is telling off Job a little bit and saying, look at what I made, look at what I did, look at this creature, look at this one. Now look at the Leviathan. Canst thou draw out Leviathan with a hook? When he raises himself, the mighty are afraid. His teeth are terrible round about. His scales are his pride, shut up together so that no air can come between them. None is so fierce that dare stir him up. Who then is able to stand before me? God is saying to Job. Now, I was watching the Discover channel, just like David was talking about, and they showed a T-Rex stomping on the beach on a sandbar, and it says the most fierce predator of the Jurassic, and it's this blood, they shoot close up on his eyes, a bloodshot eye, and he's looking vicious and everything. But then one of these jump up out of the water, bite him and drag him back into the ocean for lunch. That wasn't the fierce predator they were talking about. They were talking about a mosasaur or a Leviathan. Some of these were like 120 feet long. So this would have been a giant reptile that swam in the water. There were also giant reptiles that walked on the land, and there were giant reptiles that flew in the air. The pterosaurs, the mosasaurs are in the water. The order Dinosauria were the ones that walked on the land. Excuse me, I'm getting a little tickle in my throat. The beasts of the field of south, into the land of trouble and anguish, from whence come the young and old, the little water, excuse me, fiery flying serpent of the air. There are several places in Isaiah that mention the fiery flying reptiles, if no one's ever seen one. In Beowulf, he is in a battle with a flying snake. Every major ancient culture in the world has stories about giant reptiles that obviously they don't exist today. People say, oh, they're mythical. The biggest one, really, by comparison, was the medieval European legends of dragons, and then the Chinese dragons. And these two cultures had been separated for thousands of years, but they had the exact same stories, and even the paintings and tapestries and sculptures of these creatures in both of these cultures looked the same. It wasn't really until an Italian explorer named Marco, thank you, Caden, actually connected those two cultures and compared the stories. They were remarkably the same. Every major ancient culture in the world, giant reptiles that could swim and walk on the land and fly. Now, the legends combined them all. If you saw Dragonheart, where Sean Connery does the voice of the dragon, I am the last one, you know, if you've seen that movie. In that movie, the dragon could fly and walk and swim under the water too. But they kind of combined them all. I mean, some of them were sharp-toothed, some of them were, veggie eaters, some of them were claws, and some of them could fly. The legends tended to combine them all, but they were in the memory of mankind. And they're mentioned in the Bible, but not called dinosaurs. The fiery flying serpents of the air would be the order Pterosauria. So they are mentioned in the Bible. So probably these dragons, see, in the biblical timeline, from Noah's flood in 2348 BC, dinosaurs would have gotten off the ark. We'll talk about that in the kids' session tomorrow morning, how two of everything that had the breath of life in its nostrils got onto the ark. Well, that would include dinosaurs. They had nostrils. You can see it on that T-Rex in the mirror there. And so the idea is that these legends of dragons really come from dinosaurs coexisting with humans. Humans saw them, made sculptures and paintings and told stories about them, and then they became extinct. We actually believe that probably the very last ones that persisted went extinct sometime 500 years ago in the Middle Ages, but that they were rare at that time and, hard to spot. Not like Bigfoot. They're actually creatures that we have records of. In Hebrew, the word that is translated dragon in the Old Testament is Tanian. Say Tanian. You can speak Hebrew now, just like David. He spoke Hebrew a little while ago for us. That back one, the orange one, what would that be? A Stegosaurus. Now the front one is a Baryonyx. We've actually found this fossil, except for the little arrow on its tail. That's the way it looked. And they made a reconstruction of it at the Creation Museum there, the Baryonyx. It looks a lot like the sculptures and the paintings and tapestries and things from the Middle Ages that actually were supposed to represent mythological creatures or the dragons. But this one, we dug it up and it's actually real. It did look like that. So the legends about the dragons probably were the rare creatures that were still left over A lot of them went extinct. Eventually, all of them went extinct, we think, unless the Loch Ness Monster is really a plesiosaur and is really there. Maybe those are extinct now, or maybe they never were in Loch Ness. I don't know. But they're extinct now. But how long did they last after they got off of Noah's Ark? There's a lot of theories about that. Nobody has a real good. We'll talk about the main theory in a little bit. Okay, so if dinosaurs were plentiful, the different orders of dinosaurs, different kinds of dinosaurs, after Noah's flood, when they multiplied and replenished, just like everything else did after Noah's flood, and then for some reason, and we're not sure why, they became extinct, more extinct. Maybe they tasted good, like the dodo bird. They were stupid and friendly and tasted good, so they're extinct now. Maybe the Stegosaurus, I don't know, but there might have been something, or maybe like grizzly bears, they were dangerous, so people hunted them and killed them like knights slaying dragons. We don't really know, but their numbers did decrease. So maybe here's the people witnessing dinosaurs. Then, as they got less and less, grandparents would tell their grandkids about, oh yeah, back in the day when there were dragons or Tanian. And then the stories got changed as they combined them, and it wasn't as accurate anymore. It became more like a myth and not true observations. These are about 900 years old, these carvings, stone carvings in England. And what do they actually, well, they're dragon heads, but we actually found dinosaurs that looked like that. This is a carving, a stone carving, depicting the story of St. George and the dragon. This is very interesting, the story of St. George and the dragon, and you'll see the same thing in painting and other sculptures too. Notice the dinosaur's leg. That's a dinosaurian leg. It's not like any reptile that's alive today. Reptiles today walk with their legs splayed out to the side, with their elbows out. Lizards and turtles and everything, they all walk like that. But dinosaurs walked with their legs straight down under their body, like a horse or a cow does. And that's a dinosaurian leg. Even though the rest of it's kind of mythological, it's kind of interesting that is accurate to the way a dinosaur, a living dinosaur's leg would have looked. The rest of it looks a little mythological, but how did they know? This is another, that's another depiction of St. George and the dragon, again, with a dinosaurian type leg, not a normal reptilian leg. See, if dinosaurs really did go extinct 65 million years before humans were ever here, no one would have known this, and many, many other sort of things. This was a dragon drawing, a young fella in Fort Wayne, Indiana. He was 12 at the time. His name was Joel, and I was being just annoyingly friendly to him in the lunch line. You know how I can be at meal times with teenagers. He was 12, and he was wearing a T-shirt that said he was bold. And I said, "What are you bold about, Joel?" And he goes, "Why don't you just write in line like everybody else?" Well, anyway, he eventually turned out liking me, and he drew this dragon picture for me. So he signed it Joel the Bold, age 12. That was my name for him. He's probably out of college by now. It was a long time ago. But it's a pretty good dragon picture. But I picked this to show you because it looks very, very much like this fossil that was found in 2009. This is a real fossil found in, I think it was in the Dakotas in America. Look what it says here. The new exhibit, Dragons Unearthed, features a 66 million year old, first of its kind, dragon-like dinosaur called Draco Rex. And this is from the Stanford University. Dinosaurs and Dragons, oh my, Stanford fossil historian links dinosaur bones to mythological creatures. This is a good point. There's no denying that Draco Rex's long muzzle and spiky horns conjure up visions of a magical beast, but the museum needed an expert to confirm that it wasn't a coincidence that Draco Rex looked more like a dragon than a dinosaur. Wait till you see this. With her extensive studies of ancient cultures, conceptions of fossils as evidence of dragons, Mayer's expertise proved to be exactly what museum curators needed. Mayer was asked to share her thoughts on Draco Rex, named Draco Rex Hogwartsia, in honor of children's author J.K. Rowling. Now, in the Harry Potter movies, they actually patterned the CGI dragons after tapestries and paintings and sculptures from the Middle Ages to construct the dragon-like creatures they were going to portray in the movie. But it ended up, after that, they discovered this fossil, and it looks so much like the Harry Potter dragons, which were patterned after artwork from the Middle Ages, that they named it Hogwartsia, after the Hogwarts School of Magic in the Harry Potter movies. The shape of the dinosaur skull, with its long muzzle, bizarre knobs and horns, surprised the scientists, she said, but the skull looks strangely familiar to anyone who has studied dragons. Draco Rex has a remarkable resemblance to the dragons of ancient China and medieval Europe. This is an artist's reconstruction of what Draco Rex's head from the skull that they found would have looked like on the cover of National Geographic magazine. This is a tapestry that was hanging in a French chateau. I think it's the year 1100, something like that. And they were thinking it might be a Draco Rex. There's a superimposed on this picture the image of an actual skull of Draco Rex, and it does look pretty much like it. I wanted to mention that there's another interesting thing, that we think that the Draco Rex Hogwartsia might actually be the adult version of a pachycephalosaur. The pachycephalosaur, pachy like pachyderm, means thick skin, and that's a nickname for an elephant, pachyderm. That the pachycephalosaur, pachy means thick, cephalo means head, and saur, means dinosaur or lizard. The pachycephalosaur were those little ones that in Jurassic Park movie were ramming the jeeps with their heads with those really thick skulls. We think that those might have just been baby Hogwartsias, and a lot of scientists, evolutionary scientists, are thinking that too. Now, there's an interesting thing. There are a lot of dinosaurs that they thought they had all these different species of dinosaurs. Really, many of them are just different life stages of the same kind of dinosaurs. Now they're thinking there was only 1/3 as many species of dinosaurs as they thought, which meant there'd be more room on the ark than they're saying. We found, much like that, I was so amazed at that venomous primate. I didn't even know that existed. No, I didn't even hear about that. But Jurassic Park had that dinosaur that would flare out its neck frills and then spit, venom at somebody. Well, we actually found a Venomous Cinerentosaur and the New York Times reported that in 2009. In the longest tooth there, the VG stands for venom groove. A Gila monster doesn't have hollow fangs like a rattlesnake, but what they have is a venom pouch above their long tooth, like their canine, and a groove. The Gila monster will bite you and then squeeze that pouch, and the venom will run down like a little rain gutter down into the wound, and it's very effective. Well, they found this same situation, and there's a hollow space above that tooth where they think the venom pouch was the Cinerentosaur. And actually, the Bible actually talks about dragons having venom. Until then, only Steven Spielberg and the Bible knew that dragons had venom. For their rock is not as our rock, their wine is as the poison of dragons and the cruel venom of asps. Now, everyone knew asps were poisonous snakes, and the legend is that Cleopatra committed suicide by letting an asp bite her. That's just commonplace, but right next to it, they're mentioning dragons. How many have ever been to a Chinese restaurant? Okay, and they give you this paper placemats, and it has the year of the dog, and the year of the monkey, and the year of the rooster, and have all these year of, and they have all these different animals. And right mixed in there, like it's normal, the year of the dragon. Like it's a normal creature, listed like a normal creature, just like the list with the fiery flying serpent like it wasn't anything different or weird or make-believe. It's right in there with all those real things. This is interesting stuff, not just looking at the Bible, but looking at traditions handed down by cultures saying that, yes, in the past, these creatures were real. No big deal. They were real. We all knew. Now, if you look at the Bible's description of the Behemoth, behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee. Oh, by the way, God did make all the land animals on day 6, the same day that God made Adam and Eve. So I made with thee. He eateth grass as an ox. Lo, now his strength is in his loins, and the force of his navel is in his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. Cedars of what? What are the cedars in the Bible? Cedars of Lebanon. These were not little scrub cedars like we have growing out in the hills of Tennessee. These were cedars of Lebanon, were the kinds of lumber that King Solomon used to build the great temple. It could make rafters for a building much bigger than this. These were massive trees. And why even mention anything about him swinging his tail if it wasn't a special tail? This is as big as a cedar of Lebanon tail. So the kid is going, wow, it sounds just like a dinosaur. But then the footnote in his Bible says it was possibly an elephant or a hippopotamus. You'll see that in your Schofield reference Bible. You'll see that in the footnotes in many Bibles saying, oh yeah, this was a big creature, but it was an elephant. If it was an elephant, take a look at the elephant's tail. Look now at Behemoth, which I made with you. Eateth grass like an ox. Yeah, elephants do have strong ab muscles. They are big, but look at the tail. Was Behemoth an elephant? According to the description in Job, swingeth his tail like a giant cedar of Lebanon. Could it have been an elephant? Oh, no. Some people have said, because his ribs are like bars of iron, he is first in the ways of God, that maybe it was a rhinoceros. But again, was Behemoth a rhinoceros? Why not? Well, look at the tail. Indeed, the river may rage, she is not disturbed. So some people are thinking he can drink in a river with his mouth. Everyone knows hippopotamus has a big mouth. They were saying maybe a hippopotamus. But again, look at the tail. And it's not the biggest land creature that exists. Was it a hippopotamus? No, not if you look at the verse and the description of this creature, whatever it was from the Bible. He moves his tail like a cedar tree. Take a look at the tail on a hippopotamus. It's stumpy. It's not big enough to qualify for what they were talking about, whatever the creature was that was being talked about in Job 40. It's really a tiny tail. I got these pictures from John Hefner in eastern Texas, friend of I think it's a mutual friend of ours. Come on. And the little tail, when you look on the back end of the rhinoceros, also is not qualifying as swinging its tail like a cedar of Lebanon. There it is. It's not going to do. Elephant's tail. It's good like a mop handle, but it's not a cedar of Lebanon. This is more like what's being talked about here. A creature that has a remarkable tail you would remark about. That the tail is something unique about it, something very descriptive about it, something singular about it. And so the tail on a sauropod dinosaur, one of the large, long neck, long tail, 4-footed, walking on the land dinosaurs. Oh, I'll do this for you, Steve. Evolutionists do believe that birds evolved from dinosaurs, and there are two different kinds of hips that dinosaurs can have in their skeletons. The bird hip dinosaurs and the lizard hip dinosaurs. But this one would have been a bird hip. It's actually the 4-footed ones that have the bird-like hip. And the ones that evolutionists believe birds evolved from are the 2-legged dinosaurs that walk, like a velociraptor or something. They actually have a lizard-like hip but they had to pick those as the one birds evolved from because they walk on two hind legs. These are also the ones that had hollow bones, like birds do. It's just, I think, the science of it is kind of a mockery of the dinosaurs evolved into birds theory, which is popular, most popular in the evolutionist community today. Okay, now I got your birds and dinosaurs thing. So it couldn't be hippopotamus, it couldn't be a rhinoceros, it couldn't be an elephant, it had to be something else. When Job was looking at this and God said, "Behold now Behemoth, whom I made with thee." He is the chief in the ways of God. God was giving Job that whole speech. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Look what I did this, look what I did that. Look at the behemoth that I made. And this would have been fit the description of the creature that that God is describing to Job in Job 40. Now I want to show you something here. Dinosaur Valley State Park, and you Martins may be familiar with this. There are, and that's John Hefner there are in the Paluxy River these dinosaur footprints that have been fossilized in the mud, petrified mud, from the dinosaur days. Whether you believe, as an evolutionist does, that it's 65 million years ago or just a few thousand years ago. There's actually a place where a human footprint trail crosses a dinosaur footprint trail in the fossilized rock bottom of the Paluxy River. 14 human tracks crossed by dinosaur tracks. And later finds made this even worse. I think that's John's son there, and showing up close. The human footprints are circled in red, and the dinosaur footprints are going across it, probably an Acrocanthosaur footprint. This is the famous Delk print. Now, I actually examined this fossil for a half an hour with a high-intensity desk lamp and a magnifying glass. I couldn't find, I'm not a paleontologist, I couldn't find anything wrong with this. And it's been CAT scanned and everything. It doesn't look like a fake. And it is the way it ought to be. Some people said, oh, look, that's obviously a carved human footprint by the Acrocanthosaur three-toed dinosaur footprint, which would have weighed about 800 pounds. It was a two-legged run-in dinosaur. But take a look. The dinosaur toe is obliterating part of the human footprint, which meant that it came after the human footprint did. And the toes are splayed apart. This is exactly what would happen if you stepped in soft mud in bare feet. Your toes would be spread apart by the pressure of the mud or clay that you were stepping on. That's not some kind of fake carving of a human footprint. And plus, you might notice the big toe is bent and is stuck down into the mud more. That's what you would do if you were trying to get a grip with your bare foot to walk in the mud and keep your balance. Now, the Acrocanthosaur came later, probably a good deal later, maybe a couple days later, before this got covered up with some sediments and then petrified or fossilized. But this is another example of a dinosaur and human evidence of them existing together. Now, in Noah's flood, we wouldn't find dinosaur fossils and human fossils together. Reptiles sink when they drown. Mammals float. That's why in the old Chicago gangs, they would give you a pair of cement overshoes and throw you in the East River off the East River Bridge. They had to put cement blocks on your feet so that your mammal body wouldn't float, and they'd find a body, and the police could indict you because they have a corpus delicti, they have a body. And bird bodies also float when they drown. And so in the flood, we would expect to find all the different kinds of mammals, including humans and birds, in the upper sediments and all the reptiles in the lower sediments, just as a guideline. So we didn't actually find bodies or bones together, but we did find these footprints, which they would have walked at the same time on the same area. That's a little close-up of the Delk print. So what did happen to the dinosaurs is another thing that Stephen had asked me to mention. There are so many theories on this. The main theory, here's one that was suggested as a sense of humor. Dinosaurs were smoking cigs out behind a boys' bathroom in middle school. That's why they went extinct. But the main theory people have now, in 1981, the father and son team of Luis and Walter Alvarez found the iridium layer in Italy and then found out that it went all around the world. Now, iridium is a very rare element on Earth. It's not super valuable or anything, but it's very common in asteroids. So they were thinking an asteroid hit the Earth, pulverized, spread iridium dust everywhere, and then that was the cause of the dinosaur extinction. Now, there are so many other theories about this, but they liked it. And then they found a crater on the Yucatan Peninsula, halfway in the Gulf of Mexico and halfway on land, that would fit the description. And yeah, maybe meteors played a major role as players in instigating Noah's flood, maybe even some of the other cataclysms. I don't know, it could have been. But their darling is now the impact theory. Now, about 12 years ago, all of the paleontologists in the world got together and voted. Of all the theories we have on why the dinosaurs are extinct, they decided to vote, and they picked the asteroid impact theory. And so now, that's it. Like when they voted Pluto out of the solar system. Like Pluto cares. You know, like it matters. All we do is argue on a park bench down here, and the nature of the universe changes, or history changes. That's not true. Science is not all about you proving your theory. It's trying to discover the truth. So, well, this may very well have played a part in Noah's flood. A meteor impact. A lot of people think an ice age could have killed them, since they were not totally cold-blooded, but cold-blooded enough that this could have killed them. Of course, if you believe that birds evolved from dinosaurs, they would have had to evolve from warm-blooded dinosaurs, because birds are very warm-blooded, as we heard in David's lecture on the hummingbirds. Maybe an ice age killed a lot of the plants, maybe a nuclear winter caused by the asteroid impact. There are so many different theories. Now, I saw this at the McClung Library Museum at University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and this quote from a book in 1988, A New Look at the Dinosaurs. Now comes the important question. What caused all these extinctions at one particular time, approximately 65 million years ago? Dozens of reasons have been suggested, some serious and sensible, others quite crazy, and yet others merely as a joke, like the cigarettes joke. Every year, people come up with new theories on this thorny problem. Now, this is 1988. The impact theory was started in 1981 and gained popularity more and more in the evolutionist community as time went on from there. The trouble is that if we're to find just one reason to account for them all, it would have to explain the deaths all at the same time of animals living on land and of animals living in the sea. But in both cases of only some of those animals. For many of the land dwellers and many of the sea dwellers went on living quite happily into the following period. Alas, no such one explanation exists, and I put then, or does it? Noah's flood really does. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow in the elementary school section. A lot of adults say to me, well, I understood it a lot better when I went to the elementary session, so maybe you all will enjoy that. But this is an interesting, Sidney Harris, a science editorial cartoonist, said this. T. Radford Burke, chemist, is the only person in all of science who does not have a theory about the extinction of the dinosaurs. See, there are many, like 30 theories. The alkaloids that evolved in oak trees and others couldn't be digested by the dinosaurs, so they died of indigestion. So many different, that their favorite plant, lycopodium trees, their favorite foods went extinct, the cycad trees. There's all these different theories about it. And so just because they voted on the impact theory doesn't mean that worked. So no one really does know. No creationist, no evolutionist really has come up with a watertight theory on why there aren't dinosaurs. Large body masses are actually metabolically far more efficient. And even if you're cold-blooded, you generate some heat. And so the large body masses, just by their own living processes, wouldn't have had to expend a lot of energy to stay warm. A large mass like that would naturally stay warm. And they could probably have handled, especially the big ones, these kind of things, like ice ages and all. But you got the little teeny dinosaurs. You got the big dinosaurs. We have evidence that the Earth's atmosphere was not 21% oxygen like today, but 35% oxygen from little air bubbles frozen in ice, ice age dated glaciers up in Greenland. The Japanese scientists did some tests on those. And also deep sea muds, and the oxygen isotope ratios there indicated that there was more oxygen in the atmosphere in the past. Evolutionists and creationists both believe that. Maybe the giant dinosaurs couldn't survive with so little oxygen in the atmosphere. Even the giant dinosaurs, 140 feet from tip of the tail to tip of the nose, when you actually look at the fossil, the nostrils are only about the size of a horse's nostrils for a 75-ton body, far bigger than a horse's. And their lungs were also proportionally much smaller than you'd expect for a creature of that size. So more oxygen in the atmosphere might have been required for them. But what about the little dinosaurs that ran around? Why'd they go extinct? So it doesn't explain that either. Air pressure, we think that the air pressure was twice as great. And both of these explanations would say, oh yeah, that's how we had giant dinosaurs. That's also how we had giant 4-foot wingspan dragonflies, things like that. But again, it doesn't explain about the normally sized or smaller sized dinosaurs. We'll talk more about the size of the dinosaurs with the ark and the flood. And I hope that was informative and gave you food for thought.